The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with the usual noise of another boring meeting. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in their assigned seats, talking about trade routes and mining rights. The massive dome above them showed the stars of the Zentari system, casting soft light on the assembled delegates. Ambassador Kangde stood quietly near the human section, checking his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. His dark suit looked plain compared to the bright robes and shining armor worn by other species. Next to him, Captain Yuna of the Terran Defense Corps adjusted her simple gray uniform. Her hand rested on a sealed envelope that would change everything. Next. On today's agenda, announced the council speaker, a tall being with 4 arms and crystal skin, we have routine announcements from member species. Councillor Zefter of the Vorthic Empire was finishing his report about new crystal mines when Kangde stepped forward. His footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet that followed. The human delegation requests to speak, Kangde said in a clear voice. Several delegates looked up with mild interest. Humans rarely spoke at these meetings. Most species considered them quiet and boring. They showed up, voted on simple matters, and left without causing trouble. Of course, Ambassador, the speaker said. Please proceed. Kangde opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of worlds. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly to every corner of the massive room. The human species formally announces our complete withdrawal from all galactic affairs, effective immediately. The hall fell silent. Then a few delegates began to whisper. The announcement was so unexpected that many thought they had heard wrong. Furthermore, Kangde continued, all human colonies, stations, and ships will leave galactic space within 72 standard hours. We are ending all trade agreements, defense pacts, and diplomatic relations. Now the whispers became louder. Councillor Zefter's crystal face changed color from blue to red, a sign of confusion in his species. Ambassador, the speaker said, raising one of his 4 hands, this is highly unusual. May we ask the reason for this sudden decision? Kangde folded the paper carefully. Humanity has decided it is time to move on. We thank the Council for the past 300 years of cooperation. But this makes no sense, said Councillor Velanina of the Nephian Gas Collective. Her voice came through a translation device since her species communicated through chemical signals. Humans have invested heavily in research stations throughout the galaxy. You have people on hundreds of worlds. All human personnel will be evacuated, Captain Yuna spoke for the first time. Her voice was calm but firm. Our ships are already beginning the withdrawal process. Zefter stood up, his crystal body catching the light. This is absurd. You cannot simply abandon your responsibilities. What about your research projects, your trade contracts? All contracts will be considered void as of today, Kangde replied. Any losses will be compensated according to standard galactic law. The Trilek delegate, insect-like being with multiple eyes, clicked rapidly. His translator rendered the sound as words. Humans always were strange. But this is beyond strange. This is madness. Perhaps, Kangde said with a slight smile. But it is our choice to make. The speaker tried to restore order as delegates began talking loudly among themselves. Ambassador, surely we can discuss this. If there are problems, the Council can help solve them. There are no problems to solve, Captain Yuna said. This decision is final. As the noise in the hall grew louder, Kangde gathered his papers. He and Captain Yuna walked toward the exit, ignoring the questions shouted at them from all directions. At least tell us where you are going, called out Councillor Velanina. Kangde paused at the doorway. Somewhere safe, he said. Then they were gone. Within hours, reports began coming in from across the galaxy. Human ships were leaving starports, research stations, and mining operations. They moved with surprising speed and organization, as if the evacuation had been planned for months. Captain Heian-Wu was loading the last cargo containers onto his ship at Deep Space Station 7 when a Trilek official approached him. Captain, can you explain what is happening? Your people are leaving so quickly. Heian-Wu sealed the container and checked his manifest. Orders are orders, he said simply. But why? What has changed? The human captain looked at the Trilek for a long moment. Around them, other human crews were finishing their preparations. Ships that had been at the station for years were ready to leave within hours. Tell me, Hyanwu said, have you ever wondered why humans always seem to show up in the strangest places? Why we built research stations in empty space where nothing seemed to exist? I assumed you were studying cosmic phenomena. In a way, we were. Hyanwu climbed up the ramp to his ship. You will understand soon enough why we stayed so long. Stayed? Stayed for what? But Hyanwu was already closing the ship's door. Minutes later, his vessel lifted off and joined the stream of human ships leaving the station. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human colonies that had existed for decades suddenly became empty. Research stations in remote sectors went dark. Military outposts that humans had maintained for generations were abandoned. The speed of the withdrawal amazed other species. Some humans left behind personal belongings, family pictures, and even pets. It was as if they had been told to leave immediately, taking only what they could carry. By the end of the first day, nearly half of all human ships had disappeared from galactic space. By the second day, the number reached 80%. On the third day, the last human vessel crossed the outer boundary of known space and vanished into the darkness between galaxies. The Galactic Council held an emergency session, but there was little to discuss. Humanity was gone. Their colonies were empty. Their ships had vanished without leaving any trace of where they went. Perhaps this is for the best, Zephyr said during the meeting. Humans were always peculiar. They rarely participated in major galactic initiatives anyway. Their departure will not significantly impact our civilization. Other delegates nodded in agreement. Trade routes would adjust. Other species would take over the abandoned colonies. The galaxy would continue as it always had, but in the quiet corridors of the council building, a few beings wondered about Captain Hyanwu's final words. What did humans understand that others did not? What had they been protecting the galaxy from? These questions would soon be answered in ways that no one could imagine. As the last human ship disappeared into the void, deep space sensors recorded strange readings from sectors where human research stations had once operated. The readings made no sense to the scientists who studied them. They looked like holes in space itself, but that was impossible, wasn't it? 3 weeks had passed since the humans left, and the galaxy was learning to live without them. Trade routes had adjusted. Other species had moved into abandoned human colonies. Everything seemed normal, but normal was about to end. Commander Yunbai's old monitoring station was the first to go silent. The station sat in the outer rim, a place where few ships traveled. It monitored space traffic and watched for pirates. The Vorthic Empire had taken control of it after the humans left, thinking it would be an easy job. They were wrong. Station Omega-12 is not responding, reported Lieutenant Kellenok to his superior. The crystal being's face flickered from blue to yellow, showing worry. They missed their scheduled check-in 6 hours ago. Send a ship to investigate, ordered Admiral Jektar. Probably just equipment failure. The investigation ship found Station Omega-12 exactly where it should be. But something was wrong. The station was completely dark. No lights, no power readings, no life signs. When the rescue team boarded the station, they found it empty. Not destroyed, not damaged, just empty. A crew of 40 beings had simply vanished. Their personal belongings were still in their rooms. Food was still warm in the cafeteria, but there were no people. This makes no sense, the rescue team leader reported. It looks like everyone just disappeared in the middle of their daily routine. The strangest part was what they found in the command center. Written on the wall in what looked like burn marks were words in the human language. Admiral Taemin warned you this would happen. But Admiral Taemin had left with the other humans. 3 weeks ago, how could he have warned anyone? 2 days later, Merchant Captain Hyjin was flying her cargo ship through the Perseus sector when she saw something impossible. Control, this is cargo ship Lucky Star. She transmitted to the nearest spaceport. I need to report something strange. Go ahead, Lucky Star. Hyjin looked out her ship's window at the massive shapes moving between the stars. They were dark. So dark they seemed to swallow light itself. They moved in ways that hurt her eyes to watch. I'm seeing objects in space, large objects. They don't show up on my scanners, but I can see them with my eyes. Lucky Star, please run a diagnostic on your sensors. You may have equipment failure. My equipment is fine. Hyjin's voice rose in fear. These things are real. They're moving between the stars like they're swimming through water, and they're heading toward the inner systems. The spaceport controller checked his own long-range scanners. We show no objects in your area, Lucky Star. Suggest you return to port for medical evaluation. But 3 other ships in nearby sectors reported the same thing that day. Dark shapes moving through space. Objects that could be seen but not detected. By any instruments, the reports were filed and forgotten. Everyone assumed the crews were tired or had faulty equipment. Everyone except Dr. Wylan of the Nephian Science Academy. He had been studying the abandoned human research stations, trying to understand what humans had been doing in such strange places. This is fascinating, he told his assistant as they explored Research Station Alpha 7. The station floated in. Empty space, far from any planets or trade routes. Humans had operated it for 50 years, but no one knew why. What did you find, Doctor? Dr. Whalon held up a datapad he had discovered in the lab of Dr. So Young, a human scientist who had worked at the station. Her research notes. She was studying something called dimensional barriers and containment protocols. Dimensional barriers? That sounds like science fiction? That's what I thought. But look at this. He showed his assistant a diagram that Dr. So Young had drawn. It showed the galaxy with thousands of small points marked across it. Each of these points matches the location of a human research station or monitoring post. So, humans like to build stations in strange places, but look at the pattern. The stations form a network, like they're all connected somehow. Dr. Wylan scrolled through more of Dr. So Young's notes. She mentions something called reality anchors and psychic dampening fields. She writes about entities that exist partially outside normal space. Sounds like human imagination to me. But Dr. Wylan was starting to feel scared. She left. These notes here on purpose, like she wanted someone to find them. Her last entry says, "If you're reading this, the barriers are probably failing. God help you all." The same day, the Vorthik military decided to investigate the Keth Nebula. It was a region of space that humans had always declared off-limits. They claimed it was dangerous, but never explained why. Admiral Jektar sent 3 of his best destroyers to explore the nebula. Time to see what humans were hiding, he told his fleet. The destroyer's crystal blade. Starhammer and Voidcutter entered the nebula at exactly 14:30 Galactic Standard Time. They maintained regular communication with the fleet. At 14:45. The crystal blade reported strange sensor readings. We're detecting massive energy fluctuations, but we can't identify the source. At 15 o'clock, the Starhammer transmitted reality. SEMS unstable here. Our navigation systems are giving impossible readings. At 15:12, the Voidcutter sent a desperate message. Something is here with us. Something that shouldn't exist. We can see it, but our weapons pass right through. The transmission cut off. All 3 destroyers vanished. No wreckage. No distress. Beacons. They were simply gone, as if they had never existed. Admiral Jektar stared at his empty scanner screens. 3 of his most powerful ships had disappeared in minutes. "Send a rescue fleet," he ordered. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "I'm receiving a message. It's from the Voidcutter." "That's impossible. The Voidcutter is gone. The message is old, sir. It was recorded and set to broadcast automatically. It's from Captain Yuldak." The message played on the bridge speakers. Captain Yuldak's voice was filled with terror. "To whoever finds this recording, don't come looking for us. The humans were right. This place should be left alone. There are things here that don't belong in our reality. We should never have entered, tell Admiral Jektar. Tell him the humans were protecting us. The recording ended with sounds that no crystal being should be able to make. Sounds of fear and pain that chilled everyone who heard them. Word of the disasters spread quickly through the galaxy. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions. For the first time, delegates began asking uncomfortable questions. What were humans really doing at all those remote stations? Demanded Counselor Velenina. Why did they always refuse to explain their research? Asked the Trillic representative. And why, said Zephyr in a quiet voice, did they seem to know exactly when to leave? But there were no answers, only more questions, and more reports of strange things happening in sectors where humans used to work. The galaxy was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, humans hadn't been as boring and harmless as everyone thought. Something was very wrong. And the humans, who might have explained it, were gone deep in space. In places where human stations once stood guard, reality itself began to crack. The crisis exploded across the galaxy like a wildfire. No one could stop. Outpost Meridian was the first major military base to fall. The Trillic Empire had built it to guard their most important trade routes. Thousands of soldiers protected it. With the best weapons money could buy, none of that mattered. Meridian Base, this is Fleet Command. Report your status, called Admiral Clichter from his flagship. Silence. Meridian Base, respond immediately. Still nothing. A rescue fleet arrived. 6 hours later, they found Outpost Meridian floating exactly where it should be. The massive station looked perfect from the outside. No damage, no signs of battle. But inside was a nightmare. Every living being on the station was gone. Not dead, not injured, simply gone. The security cameras showed the final moments. Thousands of Trillic soldiers running through the corridors, firing their weapons at something that wasn't there. Look at this, said Commander Vextel as he watched the recordings. They're shooting at empty air, but they're terrified. The footage showed soldiers screaming in fear as they shot at nothing. Their energy weapons passed harmlessly through empty space. Whatever they were fighting couldn't be seen or touched. The final recording came from the command center. Lieutenant Crixville was at his post when he suddenly looked up in horror. It's here, he whispered. It's in the room with us. Then he and everyone else simply vanished. The recording kept running for 3 more hours, showing empty rooms where thousands of people had been. Meanwhile, in the Vorthic Intelligence Center, code breakers finally decoded an old human transmission. It was from Lieutenant G1, recorded during the human evacuation of Sector 15. This changes everything, said Chief Analyst Morduk as he played the message for the Vorthak High Command. Lieutenant G1's voice was calm but urgent. The void. Hunters are stirring. Containment breach imminent in sectors 12 through 18. Recommend immediate evacuation. Humanity can no longer maintain the barriers. Void hunters? Admiral Jektar looked confused. What are void hunters? I don't know, sir. But the humans seemed to think they were very dangerous. The message continued. To whoever finds this recording, we tried to warn you. We tried to protect you. But we can't hold them back anymore. Get everyone out of the outer sectors. Find a way to seal the dimensional tiers, and pray to whatever gods you believe in. The Vorthic leaders looked at each other in growing fear. Send teams to search all abandoned human facilities, ordered Admiral Jektar. Find anything that explains what they were talking about. The search teams found hundreds of research papers that humans had left behind. Most were written by Dr. Seok Jin, a human scientist who specialized in what he called exotic matter manipulation and dimensional membrane theory. This is either brilliant science or complete madness, said Dr. Yelinara as she read through the papers. He claims that our universe has thin spots where other dimensions can leak through. And he says humans have been guarding these spots for 300 years. According to this, something called interdimensional parasites feeds on organized matter and consciousness. They exist partially outside normal space, which is why our weapons can't hurt them. The more they read, the more terrified they became. The humans had discovered these creatures during their first experiments with faster-than-light travel. Unlike other species, humans proved naturally resistant to the entity's reality warping effects. No wonder they built stations in such strange places, Dr. Yelanara said. They weren't doing research, they were standing guard. The crisis spread faster than anyone could believe. New Haven Colony, home to 50 million Tralec citizens, sent out a desperate call for help. "This is Governor Zitterman," the transmission began. "Something impossible is happening here. Reality itself is breaking down." The message was filled with static and strange sounds that made no sense. Buildings are phasing in and out of existence. Gravity keeps changing. Our people are seeing things that can't be real. What kind of things? Asked the emergency response coordinator. Shapes moving through walls. Shadows that don't match any objects, and the voices. Governor Zitterman's voice cracked with fear. "We hear voices speaking languages that don't exist." The evacuation of New Haven began immediately, but it was already too late for many. Ships that tried to land found themselves in places that weren't quite the same as where they started. Some rescue teams reported that the colony seemed to exist in several different versions of reality at once. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions every day, but their experts had no solutions. Nothing in their knowledge prepared them for threats that existed outside normal physics. "How do you fight something you can't see or touch?" asked Counselor Velenina. "How do you defend against enemies that can change the laws of reality itself?" Added Zefter. The answers were in the human archives, but understanding them was proving impossible. The science was too advanced. The concepts were too strange. As more worlds reported reality distortions, the galaxy finally understood the truth. Humans hadn't been boring researchers, building pointless stations in empty space. They had been heroes standing guard against nightmares that other species couldn't even imagine, and now they were gone. The breakthrough came when a Nephian explorer ship found Dr. Neri's secret research facility. The facility was hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid in the demilitarized zone. It had been abandoned for weeks, but the computers were still running. More importantly, they were still accessible. "This is incredible," said Dr. Wylon as he explored the facility with his team. "The humans built a complete research base inside this rock. How did they even get here without anyone noticing?" "Look at this," called his assistant from the main computer terminal. "There are holographic recordings, thousands of them." The first recording they played changed everything. Dr. Nari appeared as a flickering hologram. She was a middle-aged human woman with tired eyes and gray hair. Behind her, strange machines hummed quietly. "If you're watching this, then the barriers have failed and humanity has been forced to withdraw," she began. "My name is Dr. Nari, and I'm the director of the Long Watch project." "The Long Watch?" Dr. Wylon looked at his assistant. "What's that?" Dr. Nari continued her explanation. "For over 3 centuries, humanity has been secretly maintaining a network of dimensional stabilizers throughout the galaxy. We call it the Long Watch because it requires constant attention, day and night, forever." The hologram showed a map of the galaxy covered with thousands of glowing points. Each point marked a human station or outpost. "We discovered the Void Hunters during our first faster-than-light experiments in 2387. They are entities from a parallel dimension that feeds on organized matter and consciousness. They are attracted to advanced civilizations and have been responsible for every major extinction event in galactic history." Dr. Wylon felt his breathing apparatus malfunction as fear gripped him. "Every extinction event?" "The makers who built the great rings around dead stars. The Void Hunters consumed them. The ancient ones who left crystal cities on 1,000 worlds. Gone. Every advanced civilization that has ever mysteriously vanished from the archaeological record fell to these entities." Dr. Nari's recording continued with technical details that made Dr. Wylon's head spin. The Void Hunters existed in what humans called null space, a dimension that overlapped with normal reality at certain points. These overlap points were like wounds in the universe. Unlike other species, humans proved naturally resistant to the Void Hunter's psychic influence. We don't know why. Some theorists believe it's because human brains work differently. Others think it's because we're stubborn enough to refuse to believe in impossible things even when we see them. The hologram showed pictures of human technicians working with strange machines. We developed technology to reinforce the barriers between dimensions. But the technology requires human psychic energy to function. It can't be automated. That's why humans were always at those remote stations, Dr. Wylon whispered. They weren't studying space phenomena. They were holding back an invasion. Dr. Nari's expression grew sadder. Thousands of humans have given their lives to this project. They spend years in isolation, constantly feeding their mental energy into the barrier generators. Most don't live to see retirement. The recording showed Captain Dong Huan, a military officer who had helped establish the first barrier stations. "We knew the galaxy would never understand," he said in another recording. "How do you explain to someone that you're fighting monsters they can't see? How do you ask for help against enemies that most people think are impossible?" So we kept the secret. We let other species think we were harmless researchers. We let them believe we were boring and unremarkable. It was easier than trying to make them understand the truth. The recordings revealed the full scope of the Long Watch project. Entire human families had dedicated their lives to maintaining the barriers. Children grew up on remote stations, learning to operate equipment that their parents had used before them. "We created a shadow military," explained Admiral Juwan in one recording. "The Terran Defense Corps that other species knew about was just for show. The real military was the Long Watch. We had ships, weapons, and technology that the rest of the galaxy never saw." "But the barriers are failing." Dr. Nari's final recording was the most frightening. "The Void Hunters are getting stronger. They're learning to work together. Our calculations show that within 6 months they'll break through in numbers too. Great for the current network to handle. That's why we're leaving. We need time to build new technology, stronger barriers. We're retreating to parallel space where we can work without interference from the Void Hunters." Dr. Wylon turned off the recording and looked around the abandoned facility. Everything made sense now. The strange equipment, the random locations of human stations, the humans' mysterious knowledge of things that other species had never discovered. "They were protecting us," he said quietly. "All this time, they were protecting us from something that would have destroyed the entire galaxy." His assistant was examining one of Dr. Nari's machines. "These barrier generators are still running, but look at the power readings. They're failing. How long do we have? At this rate? Maybe 3 weeks before the barriers collapse completely." Dr. Wylon looked at the star map showing thousands of barrier stations across the galaxy. Each one was failing without human operators. To maintain them, the galaxy was defenseless, and the monsters were already breaking through. The galaxy erupted into chaos as the barrier network collapsed. Vorthak Prime, home to 12 billion crystal beings, was the first core world to fall. The planet's reality simply came apart like a broken puzzle. "This is impossible," Admiral Jektar said as he watched the reports from his flagship. "A planet can't just stop existing." But the sensor readings didn't lie. Vorthak Prime was still there, but it existed in several different versions at the same time. Some showed the planet covered in ice. Others showed it as a ball of lava. In one version, the planet was completely empty of life. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving distress calls from the planet. But they're coming from different versions of reality. The evacuation was a nightmare. Rescue ships that tried to land found themselves in random versions of the planet. Some crews rescued people who claimed the year was 2891. Others found versions where the Vorthak Empire had never existed. 3 billion beings were successfully evacuated. The other 9 billion simply vanished into alternate realities that may or may not exist. The Nephian gas cities suffered a different fate. As reality became unstable in their region of space, the gas clouds that their cities floated in began to evaporate. Not from heat or cold, but because the laws of physics stopped working properly. The molecular bonds are breaking down, reported Dr. Wylon from his emergency research ship. The gas that makes up our cities is losing the ability to stay gas. Some of it is turning into energy. Some is becoming solid. It's complete chaos. Entire cities that had floated in gas clouds for thousands of years suddenly found themselves falling through empty space. Millions of Nephians died as their atmospheric suits failed in the impossible conditions. The Trelec hive mind tried to fight back using Dr. Yuna's leaked research notes. Their scientists worked day and night to build their own version of human barrier technology. "We can do this," insisted Dr. Clixen as he supervised the construction of their first dimensional stabilizer. "We have the plans, we have the materials, we just need to make it work." The device was built around their homeworld using a combination of Trelec biological computers and crystalline technology borrowed from Vorthak refugees. When they turned it on, it actually worked for about 6 minutes. "The psychic feedback is too strong," screamed Dr. Clixen as the machine overloaded. "The hive mind can't handle the mental strain." The experiment killed 12,000 linked Trelec consciousness nodes instantly. The survivors were left with severe brain damage and the knowledge that they could never try again. Meanwhile, desperate communication attempts to reach humanity failed completely. Every human colony and Earth itself seemed to have vanished from normal space. "They didn't just leave the galaxy," reported the Vorthak's best sensor technician. "They left our dimension entirely." But Admiral G1 had left one final message. "Beacon in the ruins of the human embassy." The automatic system activated when the barriers fell below critical levels. "If you're receiving this, the barriers have failed," Admiral G1's recorded voice said. "We're sorry. We did everything we could for as long as we could. We've retreated to prepared positions in parallel space. The technology exists to fight the Void Hunters, but it requires resources and time that we didn't have while maintaining the barriers. The galaxy is on its own for now. Find ways to work together, pool your knowledge, and don't give up hope. We're not abandoning you, we're preparing to save you." The message gave the surviving galactic powers something they desperately needed. Hope. An emergency alliance formed between the Vorthak Empire, the Nephian Collective, and the Trelec hive mind. For the first time in galactic history, the three major powers agreed to share all their technology and resources. "We're stronger together than apart," said Admiral Jektar during the first joint planning session. "The humans proved that by protecting all of us, even when we didn't know we needed protection." Working together, they managed to create small stable zones around major population centers. The technology was crude and dangerous compared to human barrier generators, but it worked. "We're using Vorthak crystal technology to focus psychic energy," explained Dr. Wylon to the Joint Science Council. "Nephian gas-based computers handle the complex calculations, and Trelec biological systems provide the organic components that the barriers seem to need." The price was terrible. Operating the makeshift barriers required constant mental focus from volunteers. Most operators died within days from psychic hemorrhaging. Their minds simply couldn't handle the strain of holding reality together. "We need thousands of volunteers every week," reported Medical Officer Yelkara. "And we're running out of people willing to sacrifice themselves," but the volunteers kept coming. Beings from every species volunteered to give their lives to keep their worlds stable. They knew they would die, but they also knew their sacrifice would save billions of others. The largest stable zone was created around Sector 7, the last major spaceport still operating in the galaxy. Ships from hundreds of worlds gathered there, carrying refugees and supplies. "This is our final stand," Admiral Jektar announced to the combined fleet. "If we lose this sector, we lose everything." But even with their best efforts, the Alliance could only protect a tiny fraction of the galaxy. Hundreds of worlds fell to reality storms. Entire civilizations vanished as the Void Hunters broke through in ever-increasing numbers. The galaxy that had once held trillions of beings was shrinking to a few protected zones surrounded by chaos. Then, the long-range sensors detected something impossible. Massive ships were emerging from folded space at the edge of the galaxy. Ships that shouldn't exist anymore. The humans were coming back. Fleet Admiral Condé stood on the bridge of the dimensional anchor and looked at the shattered galaxy before him. "Status report," he ordered. 70% of inhabited systems are completely lost to dimensional incursions, reported his science officer. The remaining populations are clustered in small stable zones that won't last much longer. Casualty estimates? Conservative estimate, 4 trillion beings dead or missing. The Vorthic Empire has lost 9 of their 12 core worlds. The Nephian Collective is down to their last 3 gas cities. The Trilek hive mind has been reduced to a quarter of its original size. Condé closed his eyes for a moment. The numbers were even worse than their worst-case projections. And the Void Hunter count? Over 50,000 entities have breached into normal space. They're spreading across the galaxy like a plague. The human fleet that had returned was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The ships were clearly human in design, but they were larger and more advanced than anything in previous records. They moved through space in ways that seemed to ignore physics. "Open a channel to the Galactic Emergency Council," Condé ordered. Admiral Gektar's crystalline face appeared on the screen. The proud Vorthak leader looked exhausted and defeated. "Admiral Condé, is it really you? Hello, Gektar, we're back." "Thank the crystal makers," Gektar said with obvious relief. "We tried to fight them. We tried to build barriers like yours. But we couldn't." "Stand down your barrier attempts immediately," Condé interrupted. "You're making it worse." "Making it worse? But they're all that's keeping our world stable. Your barriers are crude patches on a broken dam. They're creating pressure buildups that will cause massive explosions when they fail. Shut them down now and evacuate everyone to your strongest stable zone." Within hours, the human fleet began deploying new technology across the galaxy. The ships didn't just create barriers. They began systematically repairing the damage that had been done to reality itself. Dr. Jian, now wearing the uniform of the human dimensional cores, explained the process to the Emergency Council. "We spent the last 3 months in parallel space developing new barrier technology," she said. "The old network was a temporary solution. These new generators don't just block the Void Hunters. They actually heal the dimensional tiers." "How is that possible?" asked Dr. Wylon. "Time moves differently in parallel space. We had subjective years to work while only months passed here. We built foundries, research stations, entire cities dedicated to solving this problem. The new human ships didn't just deploy barriers. They sent teams into the void dimensions themselves to hunt down the escaped entities. Captain Seok Jin led one of the hunter teams through a dimensional portal on the edge of the Keth Nebula. His team wore armor that seemed to bend light around it and carried weapons that fired pure, crystallized spacetime. "Target acquired," he reported as his team surrounded a massive void hunter. The entity was like a living shadow that hurt to look at directly. "Beginning containment procedure." The battle was quick but terrifying. The void hunter tried to warp reality around the human team, but their new armor protected them. When Captain Seok Jin's weapon hit the entity, it didn't just die, it was erased from existence completely. "Sector 15 cleared," he reported. Moving to Sector 16. Across the galaxy, similar teams hunted down the escaped entities. It took 2 weeks, but every single Void Hunter was either destroyed or forced back into null space. Meanwhile, the new barrier network went online. Unlike the old system, these generators didn't require human operators. They were fully automated and powered by energy drawn directly from the dimensional barriers themselves. "It's a closed-loop system," Dr. Ji-Yoon explained. "The barriers generate their own power by converting void energy into usable matter. They'll run forever without maintenance." But the most important change came in the form of the new Galactic Compact. "The old system of secret protection is over," Admiral Condé announced to the assembled representatives of all surviving species. "Humanity officially accepts the role of dimensional guardians, but we're not doing it alone anymore." "What do you mean?" asked Counselor Velenina. Every species will contribute personnel and resources to the new Long Watch. You'll train alongside humans to operate the new technology. You'll share in both the responsibility and the knowledge. Zephyr crystal face flickered with surprise. You're willing to share this technology? After we failed to understand its importance for 3 centuries? The old way didn't work, Captain Yuna said as she stood beside Kang Day. Humanity carrying the entire burden alone led to this crisis. If we're going to protect the galaxy, we need the galaxy to help protect itself. The new training programs began immediately. Young beings from every species learned to operate dimensional stabilizers and reality anchors. They studied void physics and interdimensional theory. It's not easy, admitted Cadet Mortal, a young Vorthak who was among the first non-human graduates of the program. The concepts are strange and the work is dangerous, but we're actually making a difference. The galaxy that emerged from the crisis was very different from the one that had existed before. The Long Watch was no longer a secret human organization. It was a multi-species alliance dedicated to protecting reality itself. Research stations that had once been hidden were now public facilities where scientists from all species worked. Together, the technology that humans had kept secret for centuries became the foundation for a new golden age of discovery. We learned something important during this crisis, Commander Hyun-woo said in his final log entry. Protecting people in secret isn't really protecting them. Real protection comes from teaching people to protect themselves. The humans called us crazy for studying things that don't exist, he continued. Now everyone knows that sometimes the most important battles are fought against enemies that most people can't see. But the most important lesson is this: no one species, no matter how capable, should carry the burden of protecting an entire galaxy alone. We're stronger together than any of us could ever be apart. The galaxy was safe again. And this time, everyone would help keep it that way. The crisis had ended, but the real work was just beginning.